Hello and welcome to Curious City, a podcast hosted by the Emmanuel Gospel Center in Boston, Massachusetts. We explore how local churches and Christian leaders can best seek the shalom of their communities. We discuss church culture, ministry development, and issues that impact our city. Our aim is to approach each topic with humility, wisdom, and yes, curiosity. I'm your host, Caleb McCoy. Welcome to Curious City, Season 2. We are back, and I am excited to be here in our studio space.
Oh my gosh, we're here.
Our new home for Curious City and a lot of other things, production at the Emmanuel Gospel Center. So welcome. I'm happy to be here. And I'm that much more excited because I get to talk to my friend, my colleague, my co-laborer in the faith here, Jaronzie Harris. Welcome.
Yay. Thank you.
And so we have a lot to cover today. We want to talk about the community. We want to talk about the Black church. We're talking about theater and art.
Oh my gosh, so much stuff.
So much stuff. And so I'd love to get into it. But why don't you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your vocational, educational journey and what you're doing right now.
Hello, my name is Jaronzie Harris. I have been at EGC for the past 5 years. I started in 2019 as a research and networking associate on the Black Church Vitality Project.
Yeah.
And I knew about the work in the project because I was a student at Gordon Conwell with Dr. Price, and what was then the Institute for the Study of the Black Christian Experience. Shout out Dr. Price. And he told me about the work, and I was excited about it. Yeah. Because, you know, I love Black people. Yeah. I'm also Black if you're just listening to this.
The audio. Yeah.
Yeah. Just.
So tell us a little bit about that project for the.
Yeah. So the project, it was. We began as a broad-based kind of data-driven study of the Black church. It's like, who's in the church? What are they doing? How's the church doing? How many churches do we have? Yeah. What are these Black Christians even thinking about or talking about? Do they even talk to each other? Yeah. And so I started with a series of focus groups. I would go around the city and I would say, hey, are you Black? Are you a Christian? Are you in a church? Are you not a part of a church? Do you want to talk about this? And people came, and we kind of led with this like overarching question: if the Black church were to disappear, who would miss it? Dr. Wesley Roberts, Reverend Dr. Wesley Roberts at People's, that's his question. And folks responded to that. And, you know, other questions that came up. And then we were like, okay, we have a lot of information here. If we were to kind of, you know, how will we apply this data per se if, you know, we were going to begin some type of program? And that was really the beginning of the BBCVP.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, talk about how this personally like ignited a passion in you in terms of like your study of the Black church. This is not just an external study, right? This comes from your heart. Right?
It's true. It does come from my heart. Well, I'm Black, as I mentioned before. I'm also a Christian. I grew up in Durham, North Carolina, which was very much a chocolate city until recently. Which is, you know, another conversation. And my mother was, you know, she was a community organizer, did some local politics, and my grandmother was a minister. So my mom was kind of this politician, minister person. And I think that, you know, my love for the church really comes out of my love for Black people,
Black families,
Black families, Black communities, and you know, always having kind of that sense of service and I guess a faith centered in hope and love. It was like very much also rooted in the church, and you know, they've always gone hand in hand.
Well, that's really cool how it's personally been a passion of yours. And I know in talking to you, you have just a heart for the church holding a responsibility for their community, being engaged with their community. Talk about that as it relates to the Black church.
They were never separate for me, you know, going to church growing up. It was like a 3 times a week thing. On Wednesday nights, we were out in the neighborhood, knocking on people's doors, asking them, did they know Jesus? And then also, you know, all of kind of the work that we were doing in relation to our neighborhood to make it better was because we, you know, we love the Lord and we love people. And so I think some of the questions that were coming out of, the focus groups that we were having in the first kind of phases of the Black Church Vitality Project were really around, the stability of churches, the sustainability of churches in the context of displacement and gentrification. So when we put together this cohort, or we, started recruiting this cohort of churches, we really wanted to focus on churches or work with churches that were in Black neighborhoods and that were in close proximity to each other. Because that was also something that's coming up. We have almost, like over 250 Black churches in the city of Boston. And, do they talk to each other? They're often siloed. You can walk down, Washington Street or Norfolk Street and encounter a church like every block, every 2 blocks. But real. Are there relationships there? And then you can also encounter all of these other things that, could be better. And so it's like, all right, we see that neighborhoods have like a lot of needs. Black neighborhoods have a lot of needs. We also see, Black people being consistently displaced from these historic Black neighborhoods. And we see churches that have a significant presence in these neighborhoods. How can we bring these institutions together to build relationships with one another with kind of the betterment of the community at the center of all of that.
So the project kind of evolved from just doing focus groups out in the community to actually gathering a cohort of, was it just pastors or lay leaders, or the cohort you were talking about?
It is a cohort of congregations. So 10 Black churches that are located in 4 Black neighborhoods in the city. So representing Hyde Park, Dorchester, Mattapan, and Roxbury. And the design of the cohort, or kind of the recruitment strategy, was to really bring together a group of congregations that are in Black neighborhoods, like I just said, that are also in close proximity to one another. So the churches are also representative of the Black community in Boston. So we got Black Americans, there's Haitians,
West Indian,
exactly. English speaking Caribbeans, got some Nigerian representation up in there.
That seemed like the geographical or demographic information about the cohort. What was the missional focus of the cohort?
The missional focus was really around 3 areas. The first being, let's look at kind of shifting, changing cultural, social landscapes in the city of Boston. So what is going on in your neighborhood? What is going on politically? What is going on, in terms of development, education, all of these issues. And then secondly is, let's look at now your mission and values. Like, what does your church prioritize? What do you believe you should be doing in this season? And does that change as you learn more about the neighborhood that you're in?
That sounds like some vulnerable conversations.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Sorry, go ahead. What was the third thing?
I'm grateful. There's been a lot of vulnerability. And because of that, some really strong relationships.
Amen. So I think I interrupted you on the third thing.
Yes. The third thing. Yes. Christian practices. So this is not just a conversation. This is not just a vulnerable discussion. But we're really trying to do something about what we are learning. So how are we, being action oriented? How are we taking the things that we do as Christians in regard to service, in regard to ministry, and putting it towards kind of like these new visions or these new priorities as we learn more about the needs around us.
That's really good. I'm curious of so you talked a little bit about how the project has evolved, which is really cool. How has your own view in light of, often as ministers in different capacities, we just have these ideals of how things should be, and then that meets reality, that meets the on the ground, that meets budgets, that meets times and schedules. How has your own thinking evolved or developed about the Black church and what it can do, as personally, as you've undergone this project?
That's a great question. eyes have been opened in a lot of ways. And some of it is like really taking theory to practice. You know, some things I might have understood ideologically or like read in a book somewhere. But I think I could say, we've been saying, the Black church isn't a monolith. You know, there's a lot of difference, and, yes, that's true ethnically. That's true in terms of also just kind of when we're thinking about social location, class,
politics, maybe.
I was literally just about to say I took a lot for granted in the sense of like, if people just know that these luxury condos are going up the street, and they're going to displace
priorities, different priorities.
People, that everyone is not on the same page about even how we should approach these things or what should our position be on them. So I think I began this work really thinking if we can just all like get in a room together and, then we can work together. And it's like, real. Exactly. And it's like, the work is also, I won't even say it's like education, it's ministry, it's changing minds.
It's relational.
Exactly. We have to, like really when I'm saying like, how does this change your mission and your values? Or do you have, a different perspective around, thinking about like the gospel's complicity with like capitalism or, like these really, really deep things that we might not even be aware of because we're so entrenched.
And just take a step back and actually get a chance to look at that with other people or other pastors, other lay leaders. And they probably have never, including yourself, had never gotten the opportunity to take a step back and really ask those questions. And do something about it. That's
and I'll say, so that's like kind of, realizing everybody isn't on the same page. Like, wow, Jaronzie, that's all you got. But also I think that, this work has shown me the desire for that, desire for people to come together and to have, a real sense of, like unity and purpose, as Black folks, as Christians, as Bostonians, people are hungry for that. And so I will say on the reverse side of that, it's like thinking that it's going to be difficult to get people in the room, or thinking that it's going to be difficult to, get people to work together. It's like, I don't know. It's like the desire is there to work together. And, I think the real work actually is, how are we seeing the landscape and ourselves in a way in which is not necessarily the same, because I don't actually think that everybody needs to have the same position on an issue. But in a way that can be productive and that we can, be really mindful and
see each other, see our community.
See each other, yes. And be able to make some sacrifices, or give some things up. Even the work of collaboration. We want to have an event together, but everybody got their own event.
On their own budgets, their own schedules.
Exactly. And so it's like maybe, you don't prioritize something in your own individual ministry in order to be able to, put some resources or some time or some effort over here. And so I think, those are some of the things that we've been learning and I've been encountering.
I think that's powerful. I often call it like it's ministry inception, right? Like you're being ministered to, or like the work of ministry as you're doing ministry out into the world. But there's internal ministry work and transformation work that's happening even as you gather folks to talk about what you're doing in the world. I've seen that with musicians and creatives as we get together. I mean, you've been part of it. As you get together to work on a project, you feel yourself, as you get together to create something to minister to somebody, you feel yourself being ministered to. In that you feel you feel transformation happening. You feel the Spirit moving. And so I think you're talking about the same thing. It's like, as you're having these hard conversations, as you're preparing to go out into the world, out into your communities, there is necessary work that's happening among these pastors. Among these churches.
We're actually being changed and transformed.
Yeah,
and
that's
that
powerful.
It's powerful. It's great. It's also uncomfortable.
Difficult. Yeah, for sure. I think these type of conversations, both had in this context, but also for people to hear it, is really having grace for each other, the church having grace for the community having grace for the church. And to be honest, I've struggled with, and I'm sure there's other people out there that have struggled with, like, having their passion or their love for the institutional church challenged with everything, with the moments in culture that we've been experiencing, with just, it's no secret, there's usually scandals are the loudest, or church misuse is the loudest news. And I know we've had conversations of you balancing, like, the institution of the church and how to, like, protect that and how to honor that, but also, like, asking and interrogating very directly, is this church benefiting the community? And not being afraid to confront churches, pastors that sometimes are twice your senior. Like, how do you balance those two things of, like, respecting the God's kingdom or the institutional church, but also offering a challenge to them to go further into their community? I imagine that might be a difficult thing to manage.
Yeah, that's a good question. And there is a lot of tension in holding that. And we definitely have talked about that before.
Yeah.
And I think, there has been times in this work where I felt, I got to a place where I was like, is this idolatrous? Like, am I just, in terms of, like, the church as an institution, if we're saying that the church is here to serve the people, and the church is here to serve the people, and the church is serving the people.
Yeah.
And, but kind of, like, thinking about the work in more frameworks of preservation, for the sake of the church itself. This church is almost 200 years old. All of these things. But in reality, it's like, basically a museum. And like, maybe, and this is no churches that I've worked with. I'm just saying this, like, it's like, how do you, and I'll say for myself, I say my love for the church comes, from my love for Black people. So if I'm like, the church is not serving the people, then what we doing? Yeah, seriously. And I also understand, I'll say, my purpose in this time as, I guess that is the work, holding those things and recognizing, that we've always had this romantic view of history, Black church history in particular. Yeah. I think it was like 2 years ago, we were putting together a song for Black History Month. And I was trying to find, like, a nice historical record of, just someone talking about the rich and powerful legacy of the Black church. And it was like Carter G. Woodson is like talking at the beginning of the 20th century, and he's like, the churches aren't what they used to be, like the leaders and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, he's saying this 100 years ago. And so it's like all of the, because we like re-romanticize like the civil rights movement, Reconstruction, and Hush Harbors and all of that stuff. There's always been, that push and pull of, is the church doing what it needs to do? Or is it, functioning in the ways that it can function? We all have that aspiration. And then I also, I'm a daughter of the church, and I see, this is being the oldest institution that we have. Before we organized in any way, we organized around, our faith. And I see, even like Nat Turner, when he was getting his revolution popping, like they were like getting together to do Bible studies, on the prophets and Revelation. And so I see a lot of hope in, you know, the sustaining of Black churches and a lot of work, yes, but it's necessary.
This was part 1 of my conversation with Jaronzie Harris about the Black church and community. Stay tuned for the next episode and part 2 where we wrap up this conversation. You don't want to miss it.
This has been an episode of Curious City. We hope you have enjoyed listening. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and also follow us on social media at EGC Boston. Stay connected and have a blessed day.